If Luffy and Sakuna were to fight, who would come victorious? The guy with over 1100 chapters, or the guy with a quarter of that? While most people would like to tell you that this is a one-sided matchup in Luffy's favor, I'm here to tell you that this is much closer than you think. Or is it? For starters, I'll be scaling Luffy. I won't get into any in-depth explanations on why most of the scale people use are invalid. I'll just link my One Piece playlist in the description, which covers just about any existing relevant argument and One Piece scale that is invalid. So if you don't see your favorite pixel scale or your favorite misrepresentation of a statement in this video, it's probably been debunked in there. For this video I'll be using a valid Luffy scale. Starting with speed, Luffy was able to keep up with Kizaru and seemingly even outperform him in a few instances, which would make Luffy light speed to wall faster than light. For anyone thinking that Luffy should be much above light because of some random laser-like attacks that are never stated to be light speed on top of that, this is false because even the high tiers in the verse are verbatim only light speed, despite scaling much above said laser attacks in speed, so we know that in One Piece a laser is not automatically light speed. With this out of the way, we can move to power. We should scale to a similar level of power if not higher than Aokiji, who for also see. Although the calculations for this feat vary greatly depending on the assumptions you make, this would generally be about mountain to arch mountain level if we are fair, with some questionable but not fully outlandish calculations getting it as high as Silent level. There is Wall being able to cut a mountain which can reasonably be calculated at mountain level, with some calculations even going as far as the Wall Islands levels of power. Also keep in mind that only the top tiers in the verse like Dragon Kaido have resisted Wall's attacks, and even Big Mom can be damaged by them, so this is not power just anyone scales to. Luffy would also scale to Whitebird and Blackbird, who both managed to shake 2 islands, although it is noteworthy that shaking islands is much easier than shaking actual countries that lie on continents. This is because islands have much less mass underneath them to keep them steady, but regardless this should be a mountain to island level feat. The marine fort is quite small, so shaking it is not that impressive, and the individual other islands they shook are both unknown in size and unknown in distance from the marine fort, so there is no real way to scale this higher than island level without making up some ridiculous and ungrounded assumptions. And there is also the matter of shaking things being much below, destruction, for example. Shaking the universe is only multi-solar system level. So shaking is not an impressive feat. And this is as far as the genuine and reasonable scaling for the verse sense. Again, if you don't see your favorite pixel scale or interpretation of a statement, you used to scale One Piece much higher, then it's probably been debunked in my playlist, so go check that out. Now we can move on to Jujutsu Kaisen. For its speed, Sakuna performs a relativistic to faster than light feat when he counters Kashimu's electromagnetic waves with his cleave, these waves being light speed of course. We know that Sakuna does indeed scale to these attacks because after Kashimu already fired the attack, Sakuna had the time to chant the attack, then move his body to get in the position to fire, and then on top of that he fired and the cleave seemingly blitzed the wave and met it halfway despite Kashimu's attacks being, fired first. And keep in mind that this was a weakened Sakuna that wasn't even at full power. Therefore, in terms of speed, it's reasonable to say that Sakuna is in the low FDO ranges, much like Luffy. So I'd say they're pretty much even, with Luffy possibly having the slight edge in terms of reaction speed, but similar attacking speed. As for power, the most basic ways to scale the verse are using the whole purple, maximum meteor and flaming arrow feats, which would scale to city level depending on the calculations we use. And well, this is where most people leave the scaling of the verse. Jujutsu Kaisen has much better scales than this. To understand the scaling in Jujutsu Kaisen, we need to first take a look at the power system the verse has. The characters have what is known as cursed energy. Think of this as their ki or their chakra. Using cursed energy, the characters use what is known as cursed techniques. Cursed energy working like the electricity, and the cursed technique working as the tool that uses it. Meaning that the higher the cursed energy, the greater the power. And if we can prove that a certain technique uses more cursed energy than another, then we can also prove that this cursed technique is more powerful than the other technique. Then we have domain expansions. These are terrains created by a user's cursed energy. Usually domain expansions acquire more cursed energy than the character's offensive techniques, so a character does not automatically scale to their own domain expansion in terms of attack potency. But if we can prove that a technique that another character uses for offensive purposes uses more cursed energy than the domain expansion of another character, then we can also prove that the attack potency of that set technique scales above the creation of the terrain. With that said, Jogo is shown being capable of creating a mountain of boiling hot iron. This feat's creation can be calculated all the way up to a large mountain level based on a wall ball that the domain expansion size is only equal to the part of it that we see, when in reality it could be way larger. And keep in mind that this thing is so hot that it's stated to be able to turn a normal sorcerer to ash, and a sorcerer is already much more durable than a normal person. Jogo having this much cursed energy is not inconsistent because there is also Dagon, who was capable of creating an entire tropical island with an entire ocean and a sky in it, although there is no way to accurately measure this feat, as we've only seen a very small portion of it. And this is where this comes into play because we know that this would scale to the attack potency of characters like Yuta, who is described as having bottomless and limitless cursed energy. And the whole thing about his characters is that he is an extremely powerful sorcerer with more cursed energy than just about anyone else, including Gojo. This would mean that by the narrative of the show, Yuta would have more cursed energy than Jogo, and therefore Yuta's cursed energy scales at least at large mountain level. And in Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, a much weaker and less experienced Yuta is already seen learning how to strike with more power than the entirety of his cursed energy reserve. As he is literally stated to go beyond the limits of his own cursed energy to strike, giving him at least large mountain level attack potency. This would also, by the way, scale to Geto, who was able to survive being hit by Yuta, who went beyond the limits of his cursed energy. This would also scale to Sakuna, who was able to casually grab Yuta's blades and block attacks from him and even withstand them, and is said to have twice as much cursed energy as Yuta even before he transformed. And the creator verbatim saying that Sakuna is stronger than Awakened Rika, who is basically Yuta's cursed energy. And given how just a few curse techniques drain Sakuna's cursed energy reserve, which is significantly higher than Yuta's, which on its own regard is much higher than Jogo's, it's fair to assume that all of Sakuna's techniques pack at least as much of a punch as Yuta's techniques, if not much greater, considering the fact that Sakuna's physical attacks alone should scale above Yuta's attacks. So realistically, even a severely weakened Sakuna should already be large mountain level casually. Furthermore, cursed energy is compared to nuclear and fossil energy. It's established that cursed energy can replace all other sorts of energies worldwide by having the Jujutsu sorcerers power the world by themselves worldwide. And keep in mind that there aren't even that many Jujutsu sorcerers, with there being only about a few dozen of them. And it's even said that Gojo by himself can power an entire nation. And this is obviously speaking long term, not short term, because the whole context in the plot is that the characters can replace all other sorts of energy forever and make the world clean, like the other energies would no longer be needed. This is a massive feat given how much energy is required to power the whole world, and especially given how little Jujutsu sorcerers exist. And do keep in mind that most of the Jujutsu sorcerers are literal wall tires who scale nowhere near the top tier, so we know that most of the energy would come from the likes of Gojo, meaning that Sakuna scales to most of that power. So overall, in terms of power, I would have to say that Sakuna takes this. The reason being that casually powering a whole nation, a whole big nation like Gojo seemingly can, is a feat that is much better than shaking two islands with your strongest attack. And I would say that creating an iron mountain is much more impressive than freezing a sea or lifting a mountain. I want you to keep something in mind. Jogo's feat is actually much greater than what we calculated, because the calculation does not account for the fact that creation scales much above destruction. To create something out of nowhere, out of pure energy, is in actuality much greater than to simply destroy something. It's much, much stronger. So in fiction, when a character creates something, the calculation you see are almost always an extremely well-bought version, which is another reason why I would say that Jogo's mountain creation is actually much greater than the feats we see in One Piece, and by a long shot on top of that. So no matter how we put it, Sakuna is actually much stronger. But what if I told you that this is not even the best scale for Jujutsu Kaisen yet? In fact, far from it. The entire time we've been very tame in terms of scaling Jujutsu Kaisen. Brace yourselves because this is where we start for real. Firstly, the method that we use to scale Yuta's attack potency above domain expansions can also be used to scale him above the black hole that Yuki made, since it is said that the black hole is created through her own cursed energy. And going by the narrative, Yuta has more cursed energy than Yuki, and Yuta can also strike beyond the limits of his own cursed energy in terms of attack potency, therefore scaling him above the black hole. Yuki's black hole is verbatim stated to work like a real one, and it's said that even a black hole the size of a coin is as massive as Earth, including a statement that says that the black hole would have blown up the entire world had it not been stopped. This would mean that statement-wise, Yuta scales above a planet-busting move, making him at least planet level, and calculation-wise, he would be large planet level due to the sheer size of the black hole. And while a lot of people want to deny that the characters scale to Yuki's black hole, this is all copium, since Tengen and Yuki together were able to stop the black hole from blowing up the Earth. Even if you divide the feat by 2, since it's a shared feat, this would mean that both of them managed to emit enough force, enough energy, to overcome large planet levels of force. There is also Kenjaku being able to input enough energy to block the attack from reaching him with his own move, and to a lot of people would argue that he only survived because Tengen and Yuki suppressed it. This argument makes no sense when you think about it. The way Tengen and Yuki suppressed it is by limiting how far the destruction will spread. Tengen used a barrier to stop any damage from happening outside of the said barrier, and Yuki probably did something similar, as a way to stop the damage from happening. That doesn't change the fact that Kenjaku survived it, and that he was the target of the attack. The barrier Tengen made was clearly not placed between Kenjaku and the black hole, as otherwise he wouldn't have been surprised that Kenjaku survived, nor would Kenjaku have needed to use his ability to withstand the attack. It would also make no sense for Tengen to try to do this, considering the fact that he wanted Kenjaku to die, he didn't want to protect him. We also know that Kenjaku was objectively within the black hole because Yuki grabbed him, he was within grabbing distance from Yuki, who was the center of the black hole, and then the black hole expanded to dozens of meters. So he was within it, meaning that the barrier was not a factor at all. And Yuki herself has zero reason to weaken the attack for Kenjaku, considering the fact that she was trying to kill him. So much like Tengen, she probably did something to simply limit how far the attack would extend, not the power of the attack. So Kenjaku survives thanks to his own power. So no matter how we look at this, Sakuna would scale to planet level, if not large planet level. And the Kashimo feat isn't even the best speed feat Sakuna has, because even in base or severely weakened, Sakuna fired a dismantle with such speed that it extended across multiple solar systems and is said to have extended all the way to the very bounds of space, all in the span of a single panel. This would put a severely weakened and suppressed Sakuna at massively faster than Night Plus in terms of attacking speed. And post-editing message, Kashimo was able to perceive Sakuna's dismantle, a stronger Sakuna's dismantle, and he had the time to have an entire flashback before the attack hit him, and yet Sakuna's baseline movement speed was so fast that Kashimo wasn't even able to perceive it properly. Like, Sakuna literally got behind Kashimo before Kashimo could even understand what was happening, which implies that indeed Sakuna and other characters scale in terms of combat speed and in terms of movement speed to the dismantle speed, which makes them massively faster than Light Plus in all sorts of categories: perception, movement, attack, etc. So yeah, this isn't just the speed for dismantle. And I want you to keep in mind that none of this is ratty or even severely highballish, since all of this comes from clear-cut statements and feats that are seen by us with your own eyes. All of this is verbatim, and none of the statements we use change heavily by different interpretation. All of this is a reasonable scale for Sakuna. Meanwhile, for Luffy to even come close to planet level, you would need to make the most unreasonable assumptions, the most ratty arguments. You would have to take statements severely out of proportion. You'd have to use a heavily subjective interpretation of a statement. You'd have to use heavily inconsistent pixel scales, and so forth. No matter how much you rat, you can never get Luffy to a level of speed where he can extend an attack all the way to the edge of space in a single panel. This is never happening in One Piece. So if anything, a reasonable scale for Sakuna is greater than a heavily ratty scale for Luffy. A very easy to debunk scale for Luffy as well. Ability-wise, this is also heavily leaning towards Sakuna, considering the fact that Luffy's only real hacks are being made of rubber, which allows him to stretch himself, and using Haki, which grants him precog and the ability to attack the opponent's organs directly. Meanwhile, Sakuna has the ability to trap other people into spaces he creates. He has flaming and long-range cutting abilities, both of which being Luffy's weakness since he is made of rubber. He has a domain expansion which grants him undodgeable and unavoidable short hit attacks, which counters precog. He is a spirit that can survive without the need of vital organs such as the heart, which he is directly stated to be able to live without. So Luffy's organ hitting move is useless even if we assume that he has the power to damage Sakuna's organs to begin with. So even if we were to ignore the massive stat gap, Sakuna is just the perfect counter to Luffy, on top of obviously being a much smarter and better fighter. And having essentially unlimited amounts of regeneration, not to mention whether Luffy will be able to see Sakuna is up to debate considering the fact that Sakuna is a ghost, and normal people can see ghosts. With this in mind, Sakuna would dismantle Luffy both literally and metaphorically, and this is not even close, Sakuna would literally solo the verse. If you liked my video, I suggest that you hit that subscribe button for more accurate power scaling. You can also hit the like button, and you can check out my previous videos such as my One Piece debunks, my Naruto scales, my Chainsaw Man scales, my Dragon Ball scales, my Berserk scales, and so forth. See you in the next one.